What's up everyone, welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona International Speedway for what should be probably the most exciting race of the season. It's the playoff cutoff race. We're at Daytona. It's nighttime. There's plenty of storylines to be excited about, whether it be Chase Elliott or guys like Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, towing the line for the NASCAR playoff. And we're going to see Rex, Carnage, the big one. And I'm not really sure what else, but what I do know is that the racing should be good, and I'm super excited for it. But anyway, this is your first time here. What's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. You can also find me live typically on Sunday afternoons, but with this being a Saturday night race, you can see me live around 5 p.m. Eastern, and we'll probably go somewhat close to lock. I'll answer all your questions, and it'll be a good time. I'd love to see it. And if you do enjoy today's free content, or even if you don't, consider leaving a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. And feel free to leave me a comment down below. Be nice, be mean, call me ugly. I don't really care either way. I'd love to hear from you. And really quick, let me mention these sponsors of the show because they do make these videos possible. Prize Picks and Underdog, and promo code CPEN on either site will get you a deposit match bonus up to $100. No strings attached. It is free money. Use it to your advantage. There's always tons of promos on both sites to take advantage of. Like right now, over on Prize Picks, they have Dak Prescott at 0.5 passing yards. Obviously, that is going to hit. And Underdog had a couple for the preseason not too long ago. And a site that I highly recommend helping you find your pairings is OddsJam, a new sponsor, but I don't have the exact details on what we're going to do there, so I can't offer you anything yet, but they do all the math, all the algorithms for you to help you find the best selections, which that's the way you should do it. You shouldn't do it based off of feeling or emotion, or you have a gut feeling, because that does not exist. So using math is the best way to do it, and OddsJam has you covered there. So again, if you want to check it out, you can find the link down below in the description or the pinned comment, and make sure you use promo code CPEN and tell them I sent you. All right, so moving on to the strategy portion of this video. I absolutely love talking strategy for super speedways, specifically Daytona, because it's the most chaotic, because that's where we can find our edge. Because I'll tell you right now, if anyone tells you out there that they know how this race is going to play out, they have locks, they have winners for you, they are completely lying and they have no idea what's going to happen, because I have no idea what's going to happen either, but I will admit it to you. The one thing we can do is guess what the field is going to do, and by the field I mean the other people you're competing against. So doing ownership projections or median projections and figure out how everybody else is going to think, and then we can try to make our pivots and things like that in tournaments to help ourselves get an edge. Because for example, if Chase Elliott, say he's starting in the very back, he is going to be mega chalked, close to 40% ownership, but we have a BJ McLeod starting in 35th, who might be like around 5% owned. I would much rather be overweight on a guy like BJ McLeod in the back rather than Chase Elliott, because he's the type of driver that's going to be marching his way through the field. He's going to be up front, and he's way more likely to get caught up in a wreck. And if he gets in a wreck and he's 40% owned, you have a huge advantage, because BJ McLeod's going to be 5% owned. He's going to gain 20 spots after a big one. He's in 15th place, and he is crushing the slate for you at low ownership. We saw this last year. We saw the junk cars like JJ Yaley, BJ McLeod, just all the junkers. It's just a prime example of how that can work out. I'm not saying it's a given every single time, but I'm just saying fading chalk at tracks like this, I'm not saying you have to play 0%. I would not recommend that. But maybe being like 5 to 10% under, and then being like 10 to 15% over on some of these lower owned guys in the back is definitely a very strong way to go. And a couple more things. Strategy-wise, I would say leaving salary on the table is something very smart to do. We've seen optimals where there's around $20,000 left on the table. We've also seen optimals that are like $5,000. You use close to all the salary. I'm not saying it's a given either way. I'm just saying expand your horizons, because there's many things possible, and you have to account for that when you're building lineups or building projections or things like that. Another thing I do at Super Speedways is I build groups in an optimizer. So if you're using my optimizer, I will be more than happy to show you how to do it. Or if you're using any optimizer, Fantasy Cruncher, SaberSim, whatever it may be, I would highly recommend setting groups just based off of the qualifying order. I don't care the names of these drivers. I don't care what equipment they're in, what car, no matter what. Everybody's pretty much on an equal playing field here, because everybody and anybody has an equal chance of wrecking. I don't care who you are. Although the guys in the back that typically aren't in the best equipment, I'd say they have a better chance of not wrecking, because they're not going to be up front trying to jockey for position. So I would say they're a little bit safer, but obviously it's never a sexy play in those drivers. But what I do is I set 3 groups. Drivers starting 1st through 12th, 13th through 24th, and 25th on back. For the first group, I pretty much set at 0 to 2 drivers, because we typically don't see that many guys starting up front being the optimal lineup, just because it's kind of hard to do with how random this track is, and we account for that in projections. So the guys in the back are always going to project a little bit better, even if it's like a Ryan Blaney or a Joey Logano. So I want 0 to 2 drivers there. I want 0 to 3 or 4 drivers in the middle group. That's 13th through 24th. then 25th on back, I want at least 3 drivers in every single lineup. So that's pretty much the way I set it up. And like I said, we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But what we can do is set ourselves up for success by the way we build our lineups, by the way we construct everything about it, and just trying to guesstimate what the field's going to do, which I feel like I'm pretty good at. And then we make our pivots based off of that information. So it's basically just one big math game trying to find leverage, which sounds fun to me. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown portion, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is if you want to check out the Patreon completely free for a week, Patreon is still offering their free trial, so you can come in, check out all the extra content, the betting model, optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheets, the sim scores, the Discord community, which we're in 24/7, having fun, talking DFS, betting, whatever it may be. Highly recommend it. And then I also cover football, which is coming very, very soon. So if you want to come and check it out for a week, you can stay afterwards. Or if you don't, you can tell me to kick rocks. I don't really care either way, but I'd love to have you. All right, so qualifying just ended a few moments ago. So this is my first initial reaction. Run through the entire slate because I don't really know where everybody's starting here. I mean, I eyeballed it, but don't know the absolute specifics. But like I said, salary doesn't really matter too much. And all really matters is where these guys start, no matter the equipment or how their talent level is at these track types. And I can't imagine the odds change too much. I mean, maybe like Briscoe and Almirola get bumped up, or bumped down, I should say, a little bit, but I don't think anything too drastic will happen. And I currently do not have any bets on this race. I might make a couple if the odds are aligned, then I show some leverage there, but I'm not going to force anything. But we'll start up top with the man, Chase Elliott, 10-5 on DK, 12-5 over on FanDuel. He's starting in 23rd. And the ownership's definitely going to be pretty high here. I mean, we have some place differential with Elliott, very popular driver, opened up as the odds-on favorite to win this race. We know he's a good plate racer, and everybody knows he needs to win to get in the playoffs. But with all that being said, he's probably going to be higher owned than what he should be. And I'm not saying to full fade the guy. Like when I say like be underweight or fade a little bit, I don't mean like 0%. Like let's just say, for example, Chase Elliott comes in at 25% ownership. I'm talking maybe play like 15% and rather be overweight on another driver in a similar starting position. Like, so Elliott's in 23rd. The guy in 24th is Eric Jones. Like, he's pretty much the same exact play, but the ownership's going to be way lower. So why not just play Eric Jones and be overweight on that? Like, say he's going to be 15%, play 30% of him instead of like 40% of Elliott, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, yeah, Elliott's going to project well, but again, just keep in mind the ownership is a little bit scary, especially starting mid-pack. Like, there's a lot of downside here. Like, there's no guarantee he finishes in the top 15. He could easily finish 32nd or something like that. But he could also win the race. So, again, it's a sliding scale you got to play with, but if you're playing tournaments, you try to be underweight on the high-owned drivers of these track types and be overweight on the drivers that aren't getting as much love. Denny Hamlin, I'm going to pretty much throw in the same exact core category as Chase Elliott. Obviously a great plate racer, but again, anybody and everybody has an equal chance of wrecking, so just got to be careful with the high-owned ones. Ryan Blaney, if I was going to roster any driver starting inside the top 10, I believe it's just him and Brad Keselowski that I'd really, or I guess I should say top 12, that I'd really have the most interest in, maybe like a sprinkle of Chris Buescher, but Ryan Blaney, I mean, arguably the best plate racer right now, especially this season. We have a 4-race sample size, average finish of 6.5. He's been in the top 10 each and every single time, the best driver rating. So I would say he's probably going to have the best chance to win this race in my model. But keep in mind, there's just not that much starting or place differential here. So even if he does win the race, if his ownership is around, let's say close to 20%, because I feel like Blaney and Logano always have a good chunk of ownership at these track types, I'm not going to be able to give him a 20% chance to win the race in my model. It's probably going to be in the single digits, as for everyone's probably going to be. So it's going to have to kind of reflect on what my model sees. Now, obviously, he doesn't have to absolutely win the race to be optimal, but to finish in the top 3, top 2, I don't think it's going to reflect the ownership that he has. So I'll probably still be underweight on him, but he's not a full fade by any means just because of how good he is at these track types. And he's also won this race a couple years ago and has several wins at super speedways. Joey Logano kind of in the same boat, but I want to put him in the same category as Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, as I see he's starting in 18th, where these are all excellent plate racers. There's a reason that they're the most expensive and have the best odds. But again, keep in mind the ownership's trying to be a little bit too high, and Logano is always a coin flip. He's either close to winning the race or he's wrecking out, so definitely not someone I would consider for cash game purposes, and I wouldn't even consider anybody we talked about for cash game purposes as of now. Kyle Busch, even though he's been great at the super speedways, another guy where same exact categories, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, they're starting mid-pack. The upside is there. That's why you're not full fading them. But again, you just have to keep in mind the ownership. Now, William Byron, he's a bit safer here, starting nearly in 30th place. He rolls out 27th. And while he can be a bit hit or miss at super speedways, if he can keep it clean, we're probably talking about a driver that finishes in the top 10, top 15. So you definitely have to have interest there just because there's so much place differential upside, but also keep in mind the ownership will be high on Byron. Might even be the highest of all these drivers at $9,500, and he starts the furthest back. So for tournaments, keep that in mind. Still obviously playable. I would probably have the most of William Byron of all these drivers so far, and I would say he's the only one that I would have any interest in cash games. Brad Keselowski, I would throw him in the same exact group as Ryan Blaney, where he's a potential winner. Obviously great at the super speedways, has 2 top 5s this year, and seems to be in contention every single time. Kyle Larson's an auto fade for me at all super speedways. He starts in 7th. So far this year in 4 races, he has 1 top 20 and an average finish of 30th. He is just a magnet to wreck every single time, and I don't have any interest in him starting inside the top 10. If he happens to win the race, whatever, I'll take the L there, but I'm willing to bet that probably doesn't happen. Chris Buescher, he's starting at 11th. I would say he's kind of the same exact play as Brad Keselowski, his teammate. They showed similar speed, and I don't really see a reason why Chris Buescher can't run with Brad Keselowski. The ownership will be lower on him, so I mean, he would be a decent tournament pivot off of Keselowski, because I do think within of the top 12 drivers, Keselowski and Blaney will probably garner the most ownership. So Buescher wouldn't be a bad pivot there, even though he's got very similar upside. But when I talk about having interest in these drivers, I mean pretty much just a sprinkle, because rostering guys starting inside the top 15 at Daytona is usually a very risky strategy. Not saying it can't work out, just more often than not it doesn't. Dropping down to the 8K range with Bubba Wallace. He's starting in 4th. I love him at super speedways, but I do not love him in the starting position. And as good as he is at these track types, just a prime example of how random these tracks can be. Average finish this year in 4 races, 25th, with only 1 top 20 finish to show for it. Not even 1 top 15. So again, just the brutal luck that Daytona can be. It's a good example to show you. Martin Truex Jr., he's starting in 13th. Not typically a guy like at super speedways. Doesn't even have a top 10 at one this year, starting in 13th. I don't really see the upside here, so I'll be passing on Truex. And if I'm playing 150, maybe I get like a sprinkle, like just under 10% or less than 5%. But I'm trying to talk in like a 20 max scenario or 1 to 3 max, because 150 everybody's in play, pretty much besides the front row. So if you're only building a couple lineups, I can't really see myself getting to any Truex. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he won the Daytona 500 earlier this year. I think he was starting in 31st, so a very similar starting position here. He's been in the top 20 every single super speedway race so far this season, average finish of 11th. He's definitely going to be a very popular cash game play. I can certainly get behind it. Daniel Suarez, Ross Chastain, the 2 Trackhouse cars, both had similar speed in qualifying. If pricing mattered this week, $1,500 on Ross is insane, but obviously it doesn't matter, so hard to get too excited about anything. Suarez has had some better luck finish-wise at the Super Speedways this year, but they just pretty much have the same exact running position. It just goes again to show you where you just have to have luck on your side. But both are very similar plays. I'll have similar exposure, probably just more Ross because he starts a little bit further back, but both are viable. Christopher Bell, he's starting in 15th. So I would say of the drivers starting inside the top 15 so far, I do like Bell, which I'll talk about in a second. I like Keselowski and I like Ryan Blaney. Also throw Buescher in there, but Bell's had some pretty good speed at these track types, and really in general he's always been pretty good at them. Average finish inside of the top 10. He's got 2 top 5s, 3 top 15s so far this year. Again, very small sample size, and you can always just say he gets a little bit lucky by not wrecking out, which anybody has the ability to do that. But starting in 15th here, I think he's one of those guys that you can play in tournaments starting inside the top half of the field. Like Christopher Bell is pretty much the same exact play as Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Hamlin, Elliott, but he's not going to get nearly the same ownership. So I don't mind him as a nice pivot play there if you're trying to get some guys starting closer to the front. Tyler Reddick, he typically has some pretty awful luck at these track types, but starting mid-pack here, you got to have at least some exposure. Michael McDowell, $7,800. He is starting dead last, had an issue with the car in qualifying. I guess he wants to ask NASCAR if they can take a look at it without any severe penalty or anything like that. And it's not like we have to worry about him dropping to the rear because he's already in the rear. Now, I'll tell you right now, if anybody goes to the rear, I do not care. It does not matter at a track like this. But McDowell, I mean, starting dead last, he is going to be the chalk of the slate, and he's in a Ford. The Fords look pretty fast today, and he's not a bad super speedway driver, so I would just lock and load him in cash games, and in tournaments even, there's really not that much downside. As long as he's not one of the first drivers to wreck out, I mean, he should be in for a really good day fantasy point-wise. Alex Bowman, $7,600. He's starting all the way back in 31st. Another guy that's going to be very viable for cash games and just going to have a good chunk of exposure in my lineups. In 4 races this year, he's got 3 top 15s. And again, as long as he avoids carnage, he looks A-okay to me. But he's one of those guys that also has to win to get the race, or win to get in the playoffs. So I don't think he's going to be just kind of laying back all day. Definitely should be aggressive. Now, I'm hoping it's not till the end, but those Hendrick guys like to try to get up front. So I'll have my concerns there, but the downside is limited because of the starting position. Austin Dillon, I believe, won this race last year in the same exact starting position, just was the lucky one driver that avoided every single wreck that was at least somewhat close to the front. Starting in 21st here, he's in play, just hasn't really had luck at the track types like this so far this year, but again, that's all luck-based. Austin Cindric, kind of throw him in that same group as Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, where he can definitely be a front runner. He's won Daytona before. He's in a Penske car, which we know Penske tends to run these tracks very well. And as you can see, he's got one of the best average running positions in the entire field at these track types. So I would certainly keep him in your tournament pool. And I don't think the ownership is going to be high whatsoever because no one likes to play Cindric even when he's in the 5K range. So being at $7,300 and 16th is probably not going to get too many people's attention. Ty Gibbs, I like the guy. He's going to have to win this race, but I just really can't play him starting in 5th. If he wins, so be it, but I just can't risk it starting in 5th. If you're playing 150 lineups, maybe he gets in like 2 to 3%, but that's really about it. Kevin Harvick, don't really have any interest there. Dropping down to the 6K range, Eric Almirola, super fast car in qualifying, but I am not playing a driver starting in the front row at Daytona, so no thank you, even though he is a good super speedway driver, but I mean, I just can't do it in that starting position. And then we have Eric Jones starting in 24th. I love him at super speedways, and don't forget, there's a lot of drivers that they can just win. I mean, they're in the playoffs, and Eric Jones is certainly capable of winning a super speed race. We've seen him do it before, so I'm definitely a fan of Eric Jones starting in 24th. I'm hoping the ownership isn't anything too crazy. I feel like we typically see him in this starting spot and around 20% ownership, but I'm really hoping it's lower this time around. But I'm looking at the 6K range, and with all these drivers starting close to the front and right above him, I do worry that it could be a little bit up there. Chase Briscoe, no chance starting on the pole. I mean, we've seen instances where the pole setters won the race at Daytona, and they're still not in the optimal lineup. There's just no upside here for Briscoe and just really all the downsides, so I don't see a reason to play him. I think if he has any ownership, that's just ownership that's too much. Ryan Preece starting in 9th, also can't do that. AJ Allmendinger starting in 17th might be a sneaky tournament play, because again, like what really makes him much different than guys like Elliott, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano? Like looking at their numbers, and then look at AJ Allmendinger, and they're really not that far off. He's got a couple of top 10s, has a top 5, good average finish so far this year. And I mean, the colleague cars can definitely perform well at these plate tracks. So I don't think AJ Allmendinger should be crossed off, even though his starting position is a little high. Corey LaJoie, another guy you just jam in for cash games. He's great at super speedways, and he's starting in 37th, so I don't see a reason not to like him. Justin Haley, I mean, I feel like both colleague cars are certainly in play, but with Haley, you get a lot more upside with him starting in 28th and less downside. So I would say he'll probably have more ownership, but I would definitely have exposure to both. Todd Gillen, another guy you can just throw in for cash games. He's in 35th. I don't think front row is going to be absolutely awful in this race. I mean, you have Michael McDowell and Riley Herbst, who qualified very well in 6th, which was really surprising. But I mean, Gillen's certainly in play, very safe. Josh Berry, he's in the Gregson car this week. I don't see why he's a bad play. Like all these cheap guys in the back are all playable. I mean, if they just avoid wrecks, they're going to get place differential, and it happens just about every single time. Harrison Burton, not a chance. Austin Hill, he is in the 62 car, which I have a fond love of at Daytona and super speedways in general because Brendan Gaughan always did me well. I don't like that he's starting in 26, but I mean, he's going to be low owned, and we like the low owned guys in the back. Like I realize him and Eric Jones aren't the same exact kind of driver, but we know that Austin Hill is a very good super speedway driver. We see it in the Xfinity Series almost every single time. So I think you have to have some exposure, even though it's not obviously the same kind of car. Chandler Smith in 36. Again, you can just jam in all these cheap guys starting in the 30s for cash games. I have no problem with that. Like if you wanted to make a cash lineup with Chandler Smith, Todd Gillen, Corey LaJoie, Michael McDowell all in it, that is totally fine by me. Riley Herbst, I had a lot of interest in him heading into the weekend. He did me great at the Daytona 500, but when you qualify 6th, that just kind of puts you out of contention for me. So unfortunately, we do have to part ways, Riley. And then after that, we get into our absolute backmarker cars here, which we usually skip, but do not do that this week because they are going to come in handy because they're always in single digit ownership, and that's typically a mistake because they have just as much upside as these other guys. And as you can see, JJ Elliott this year, I mean, he's averaging 47.5 DraftKings points per race. Only driver better than that's Riley Herbst. And then we also have a couple like Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch. But I mean, there isn't a reason at all not to like JJ Elliott. Average finish of 14th this year, just right around the back. And then take your good finish at the end. That's all these guys are hoping for. Ty Dillon, same exact category. Brendan Poole as well. And BJ McLeod, no one ever likes to pay BJ, which I get because he's so slow. But he's starting in 38th. If he can finish in the top 25, you are taking that. Like, there's a very good chance BJ could be a much better play than any of these drivers up front that crashes out early on, because they're going to give you, they're going to sink you in the negatives by quite a bit. And BJ, I mean, he just has one of the best floors in the entire slate. But with that being said, guys, that's all I got for this week's video. If you did enjoy, or even if you didn't, consider leaving a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'll be more than happy to answer them down below. Hope to see you all on the live stream tomorrow on 5 p.m. Eastern. Check out the Patreon if you want for a free week of just a bunch of content on there that I think you guys will enjoy. But I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.